Hello, everyone. Lucy Heavens here. Welcome to another episode of CMO Therapy, a podcast that's hopefully going to help you navigate your way through your marketing journey. Because let me tell you, I get it. Being a marketing leader is no walk in the park. In each episode, we dive headfirst into the world of marketing, where uncertainty, tight budgets, and fierce competition are just the beginning of the rollercoaster ride. But guess what? You are not alone in this. Why go solo when you can tap into the powerhouse of insights from some of the most awesome marketing leaders in the game? And look, the title might include the word therapy, but we are not just talking about challenges here. We are tackling them head on. So join us as we deep dive into the nitty gritty, share war stories, and unlock secret strategies. And get ready for no holds barred conversations because sometimes I have no filter. So if you are a chief marketing officer, a marketing lead, or just someone looking to up their marketing game, then I am so glad that you're here with us today. And today I am so glad to have the very awesome Louise Beaumont here with me. Louise, would you like to do a little bit of an introduction for the audience?
Right. Hello everybody. I lead marketing communications and design at Invella. Invella is a fintech company in the open finance risk management space. And that's a new category, and I suspect that might come up in our conversation. I also sit on the UK government's Smart Data Council in the open banking, open finance, open data space. And I chair a podcasting company called Message Heard.
Amazing, thank you. We had a little bit of a chat before, and we decided on a title which was "Burn the Playbook." And yes, I mean that quite literally, because the thing that we talked about is that most CMOs, when they walk into a new role, they walk in with this kind of mental playbook in mind. So strategies and campaigns and things that have worked before and frameworks and kind of best practices, I hate that word, that they've built up over all of their kind of years of experience. And honestly, I really do truly believe that experience is one of our biggest assets. Until it isn't, though, right?
Mm.
So, because a playbook that grew a SaaS company from kind of 5 to 50 million doesn't automatically work in a new category where your audience, like what you said, doesn't even know that the problem that they have yet, or what you're solving for. And I think that context kind of changes everything. So, that is what we are going to get into today. So when should you trust your experience, all of that years of experience that you've had? When should you throw it out the window and kind of start again, build your new playbook? And then how do you build the conditions for success where there is no map to follow then? So that's what we're going to get into.
Again.
Okay, so let me start then where I kind of started with that introduction. So every CMO that walks into this new role with this kind of mental sort of playbook in mind, all of these things that have worked for them in the past, they're like, yeah, I can do this. I can just reuse a lot of this. But let's be honest. So how tempting has it been for you in the past, I suppose, just to kind of to do that, to sort of think, yes, okay, well, there's a bunch of things that worked before. How can I copy and paste that?
It is always tempting. And I'll tell you why. It's because a playbook, it feels like competence, right? You've done this before, you know what good looks like, you've got case studies in your head, you've got campaigns that you're really proud of, tactics that you've used before, you absolutely know they work. And when you distill it all the way down, that playbook is basically your professional identity, and you've condensed it into you, kind of think of it as ready to wear. Um, and you walk into that new job, and the temptation to reach for that playbook, that your professional identity, is not just laziness. I mean, it might be, but it's not just laziness. It actually feels like you're being responsible because it's probably why you were hired, right? Your track record. It's probably got quite a bit to do with why you were hired. But the problem is that playbook is always retrospective. It's that record of what you did before in a different market for what could be a different buyer completely at a different time. So it's always retrospective. That's a given. And the second you just copy paste that into a new situation without asking yourself if that situation is incredibly precisely, absolutely the same, that's when your experience stops being an asset and it starts being an absolute liability.
I agree. I totally agree. It's sometimes it is just, I mean, I think it's human nature, isn't it? To kind of think, I've been here, I've done this before, and, this worked for me. It's kind of the quick route. And that's the thing. I think we're under a lot of pressure when we go into a new role, aren't we? To kind of show that immediate impact. So I can kind of imagine. But I love what you just said about it kind of becoming a liability. So how have you kind of seen that? So where does it become a liability? How do you know that situation that you're in is kind of is actually different from where you were from where you are now? Sorry, where you were before. Yeah, how do you know? What are the signs?
Well, it's always down to the quality of the questions you ask, right? And it's something I really look for when I'm hiring, whether it's for someone to work alongside me in any capacity. What I'm looking for is how good are this person's questions. You then subsequently want to know how good their answers might be, but you start off with curiosity. How good are the questions? So the question I ask, if I'm in this situation, I'm coming into a new role, I'm coming in to do something for the first time, I ask myself one question, which is, does my buyer already know they've got the problem that my company solves? That's it. That's the test.
Mm.
If the answer is yes, they know they've got the problem, they're actively looking for solutions, there are competitors in the space, then guess what? Your experience is probably transferable because you're fishing in the same lake that you were fishing in your last role. There are buyers in there. You just need better bait than the competition. And I don't know why I just came up with a fishing analogy. I don't fish, but bear with me. Let's see if I can make this work. The playbook that you're bringing with you might need tweaking, but it'll probably work. You might need to shift an edge here or there, jam it into position, but it'll probably work. If the answer is no, the buyer doesn't know the problem exists. They may not even know that they've got a problem. There's no existing demand to capture. There's no competitors. It might not be a recognized category. Then you're in completely different territory because there is no lake, right? You're going to have to make it rain so that you can create your own damn lake. And there's nothing in the standard marketing playbook that helps you do that. Never mind any experience that you might have had from before. Because the standard marketing playbook is all built on demand capture. The demand's already out there. I've just got to capture it. So depending on what market you're in, that might mean comparison sites or competitor keywords or retargeting. It all assumes that your buyer is already in motion. And the dangerous middle ground is when you think you're in situation one, happily fishing by in a lake, and you're absolutely in situation two, and you should be doing the rain dance. Because what you're doing is you're executing confidently and you're getting bugger all back, right? Instead of asking yourself, oh, am I doing the wrong thing here? Is the playbook not working? You just think, no, I'm going to double down. I'm going to do even more of it. I'm going to up my spend doing these things that my experience tells me work. And that's when your experience becomes an absolute liability and you become frankly dangerous and unpopular.
This is so good. Yeah. And honestly, hold my hands up. I have absolutely been in that situation before. I think, when you're going into a new role or when you're just starting to kind of, launch something, you do just sometimes get a little bit kind of overexcited. And, it's very much kind of about the tactics, right? This is really great. This is how we can launch this. But yeah, doing that analysis then is so key, isn't it? So it's pretty much what I'm hearing then. It's not so much um you can have a playbook structure almost like a framework, but it's the playbook of all of the the tactics,
Yeah,
and
do
any
this,
any
don't
kind
do
of
that.
like
Yeah.
yeah, any sort of playbook structure, you've got to do that. The first key part then, what you're saying, is that kind of analysis of where you are now, right?
Ask the hard question. Ask the
Yeah.
really hard question. Ask the question you don't want to ask.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. And how have you kind of done that in organizations before then? Where do you kind of start with that?
What you mean about asking that question or saying, well, there is no, I mean, I'll give you an example, which is in Vela, right? There is no category. There is no open finance risk management category. So there are no benchmarks. There is no existing demand. I am doing the rain dance. Um, and that's a visual image that nobody needed. Um, and your first job, therefore, is not to be found because no one's looking, right? No one is looking. You've actually got to do something which is harder than being found. You've got to make somebody feel something that they haven't felt before. And I've got a really unpleasant term for this. I call it implanting the brain worm.
Oh wow.
You,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, with music, you can have an earworm, that song that never leaves you.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
and it's always the terrible song, the embarrassing song, the song you wish you weren't humming. It's that song. The brain worm is similarly irritating.
I know all the words to Ice Ice Baby. That's
Oh,
one that I
there
would
you
love.
go. There you go. And I suspect an embarrassing number of people do, and I might be one of them. I deny it, but Um, but that brainworm is something that you hear or you see, and you can't unhear it, you can't unsee it. And you go home and you think about it, you hum it at 11 o'clock at night. You worry about it at 3 o'clock in the morning. You get up, you talk to a colleague about it because it won't leave you alone. And in implanting a brainworm, you're not trying to close a sale, right? Absolutely not. You're not even trying to generate a lead. You're trying to trigger an insight, right? You're trying to get someone to go from, I have no idea what you're talking about, to, oh God, that's us. That's what you're trying to do. That moment where they get the shiver down the back of their neck and they go, oh my God, that's us. Not, I can laugh and point and say it's someone else, but no, oh God, it's us. It's me. And that moment is a really special moment in any marketer's life, right? When they find the brainworm. And the way that we tend to do it, because we're humans, I mean, we'll get to LLMs, I'm sure, but we're humans. So we tend to use things like stories or analogies. And at Invela, I use a couple. One of which, because we're in that space between, there's regulation, but there's also unregulated parts of the market. So I tend to talk about the picket fence. So we all know what a picket fence looks like. It's white. It's outside a house, and it's got these slats in it, the pickets which stand upright. And I always think of that in open finance. You've got a regulator owns one slat in that picket fence. So they own one sector, they own, one jurisdiction, that's theirs. And you've got lots of regulators in open finance because you're going to have one for banking side of things, you have one for insurance, one for pensions, etc., etc. But open finance moves horizontally, so they're guarding the world in their vertical little slat, but the data moves through those slats, but also between them. And nobody owns the gaps between the regulator. Nobody owns the gaps in the picket fence. And it gets worse. There are only a few hundred regulated entities in any one jurisdiction. There are thousands, tens of thousands of unregulated entities in the open finance ecosystem. And so if you're a bank or if you're a building society, you know those companies, regulated and unregulated, are touching your customers' financial data now, right now, without your knowledge. Companies that you, as a bank or a building society, you've never assessed, you've never onboarded, you've never accredited. They're in your chain because your customer, consumer or business, has said yes to something, yes to sharing their data. And that permission is kind of cascaded until it reaches entities that, your regulator, your customer, no one's ever looked at properly. And there's a silence to that, right? This isn't risk that announces itself with, fingers down a chalkboard. There's no screeching sound of risk, arriving at your door. It just builds up, it accumulates, and it does it quietly, it does it unnoticed, it does it unmonitored, and it does it ungoverned. And when you've taken somebody through that, you can see people get a little bit kind of physically uncomfortable because they map it onto their own experience and they can understand how it applies to them. And that's the start of a sort of brainworm where they've got a really strong visual image and a really strong sense of relevance to them. So you're not giving them a product pitch. You're not telling them, look under the hood, this is what my product does, this is how it works. You're getting them to shift their worldview. And once somebody has shifted their worldview, in effect, acknowledged your worldview, they've got the brainworm. And that's the start of them being on that journey. You haven't sold them anything yet, but they're just that little bit more ready for when you do.
I absolutely love that. And I mean, literally, yeah, I get exactly what you do without you kind of explaining the tech or anything like that. Like, I get it because you've told me a story. It was an emotional story. I could really feel it. I can relate to it. I mean, I come from that world as well, but with the kind of the regulations and the fintech, but I don't think it matters. I think I can imagine my mum understanding that as well. But I think you've just kind of
That's
really,
another really good test.
that's always a good test, isn't it? Yeah.
My mum test.
Yeah.
If my mum gets it, and my poor mother, she's been subjected to some ridiculous conversations in her time. But if
Yeah.
she, at the end of it, and she's not technical at all, she's not in the world of fintech, she's not in the world of marketing, she's in the world of her garden.
Yeah.
But if it passes the my mum test, you're onto something. You really are.
So I feel like we're going on a bit of a journey here. And I'm kind of now like wondering if we can go back and have a talk about the title, Burn the Playbook, because I kind of feel like what we're doing is maybe not burning the playbook, where maybe there's something gone wrong with the kind of interpretation of what a playbook is. Because I feel like what you're saying is that you kind of do have a playbook in a way, which is, understand exactly who your audience is, ask all these questions when you're in the organization, really think about what that, like you just said, that story and that emotional connection, the brain, I absolutely love that. I'm so going to steal that. The brainworm, like how you can kind of plant that brainworm and then kind of, tactics kind of follow after. But maybe that's the thing then here. Maybe it's this interpretation of playbook is like you said at the start, people are coming along going, yeah, I'm just going to turn on some paid ads and do a bit of demand gen and do you know what I mean?
So, I mean, maybe I'm a closet arsonist. I always want to burn the damn playbook because I guess I think it's a little lazy, and I think you can ask better questions. But I do think there's something about, principles. Principles matter. Tactics less so. But discipline also matters, right? So what What I like is the underlying rigor of a playbook. Know your buyer, be consistent, measure what matters, have a point of view, all of that kind of rigor. That discipline, bring that wherever you go. You know, wherever you pitch up, wherever you set up your stall, bring those things. But what doesn't transfer easily is all of that specific machinery, because particularly if you're in my world, which is category creation, because all of that machinery is typically designed for a world where the demand already exists and you've got a lake and you're fishing. But what I always keep is that instinct for a good story, that ability to identify something that's genuine insight. And that's the hairs on the back of your neck, right? If you're coming to a genuine insight, that everybody reacts to that physically, you know you've got one. And building the content around that. And I like the discipline of a campaign architecture, right? Because that, you fit all the bits in and it's like a self-supporting bridge. You get the keystone in and everything stands up. But I have thrown out, the stuff about, SEO will find me customers immediately, lead generation program will give me pipeline immediately. The buyer journey looks the same in every situation. But there's something else that I think is really important, and I think this is incredibly important in a world of AI, and that's remembering what value we as humans bring. So I might have a very, very small team at Invella of humans, but I've got, 10 times that many agents, right? Because we build them all the time. But the thing that differentiates us and the thing that I would always want to hang on to is taste. And the playbook can't give you taste, right? But taste is the most important thing that you can bring to a new category, because in the absence of all of those things that you would normally rely on, benchmarks, competitors, established formats, you're actually making hundreds of judgment calls a week about what good looks like. And your taste is the only kind of decent compass that you've got to guide you. And I define it kind of like as discernment, the ability to articulate why one thing is better than another. Pattern recognition, where you can go, I have got a sense of whether this is chiming with what we've done before or clashing with it horribly. And then I'd say it's something about idiosyncrasy, that really specific, that really personal to you, to the brand quality that makes you you and not anybody else. And that's what makes it incredibly hard to clone. And that's something a playbook or a brand book or any other kind of book, they can't give you that. And I have never seen great taste on any list of qualities people are looking for when they're looking to hire. But I have that right up there with great questions, curious mind, fabulous taste, because I think these are the things that really, really matter and make you better.
Better than AI. It's the things that AI can't do. That's all the qualities you just described, which is perfect and exactly how I think people should be, like CMOs should be hiring and building their team now.
Mm.
Is a bunch exactly what you've done, a bunch of agents, but hire for those qualities that AI can't do. Definitely. So it's okay. We'll go back then. It does sound like we are kind of back on track with the burn the playbook, but what we're actually saying, instead of burning the playbook, what we've got is some more like guiding principles, I suppose, is what you sort of listed, that maybe like you can follow in any new job or new industry that you're going into or new product that you're launching. Is just start with those human kind of guiding principles, and then the playbook, can be kind of a bunch of whatever tactics, like a toolbox, I suppose, of tactics that you can kind of like pick from. Would you agree?
Yes, but I'd always challenge, right? I'd always challenge. I would claim to have, I hope to have a curious mind. So I'm always looking out there for really interesting ideas, things that I can use. And quite often I'm sat there going, but this doesn't work for me. This
Yeah.
works for an established product in an established market where you're grappling with competitors. So always look, always question, but have the confidence to know whether or not this is going to work for you. And I
Yeah.
guess that's where the principles come in, right?
Sorry to interrupt, but I have a tiny ask while you sip that overpriced oat latte. If you're liking CMO therapy, please hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. It takes 5 seconds tops and it keeps this marketing madness going. Okay, back to the good stuff. I have had that is, and again, just holding my hands up, being honest. I've had, especially when you've been in a field like I have for a long time, one particular field, is you do get to the point where you like you do well you've got a lot of experience in that one field, right? But I've definitely been in situations where I've gone into a company, and there was one in particular, I'll be honest, where they had they it looked like they were in a certain kind of position or state, like they had a lot of there were a lot of signals that there was a lot of demand to be captured, to put it that
Yeah.
way, like what you were saying. And immediately then in my head, I'm like, right, okay, my hypothesis of that kind of initial analysis that I'd done was I need to capture that demand. It's kind of sitting there, almost like sitting on the doorstep, waiting for me to open the door. That's great. I'm going to open the door, let them in, put all that bottom of the funnel sort of content in front of them, and Bob's your uncle. We got a bunch of leads. What I didn't do though was really take the time to understand what all those people that were sitting on the doorstep were, and they weren't my people. They weren't
Mm.
the right target audience. I should have done that kind of analysis first. So by the time I opened the door and kind of let them in, yeah, well, they first of all, they most of them kind of ran away. I don't know where I'm going with this analogy now,
Yeah.
but it didn't work, is what I'm trying to say. It didn't
Mhm.
work. But yeah, in that situation, I really wish I would have taken a bit more time to do that kind of analysis, like first of all, like what we've been talking about.
Yeah, no salesman or sales team ever welcomes the new marketing person by saying, "Take your time, love."
Well, that was actually where I was going to go with the
Mm.
next question, actually, was that love all of this and like really on board with it. But like what I'm interested to know is like, how have you handled that conversation that we just mentioned then? Like, you've been brought into a company, you're there to generate that demand. How do you kind of have that conversation of like, okay, look, this is not going to happen tomorrow? Yeah.
It's a hard one, right? Because it requires, and it also you will use unexpected tools to get the job done. So the conversation is really about letting people understand what it takes to do something, how long it takes to create a new category. It's not something you do in an idle moment. And you need patience, right? You need patience to measure the right thing. And in year one of a new category, winning doesn't look like pipeline, right? It looks like the number of people who now know the problem has a name. The number of people who've gone, oh God, that's me, that's us. And it might mean that somebody's, come and, watched a panel or sat in the audience or read one of our reports or whatever, and they mention it unprompted to a colleague. And I'm not there. I'm not there to see that moment happen. But that's category creation working. And it's invisible on most dashboards, right? You're not going to see it flashing at you green. But it's the thing that really matters in year one, because pipeline is downstream of awareness, and awareness is downstream of the brainworm. Um, and what I meant there when I said you might have to use some unexpected, tools. And this is specific to get to kind of category creation. For example, I sit on the UK government Smart Data Council, and that's part of the endeavour to create the category, right? And it sounds like a really not marketing thing to do, but here's the logic. In creating a new category, the problem doesn't have a name, right? It's an amorphous thing that most people are ignoring successfully. So you need the problem to have a name, And the people who name problems, the people who define what, in our case, the risk is, who's responsible, what the governance framework looks like, they tend to be regulators and governments and standards bodies and so on, right? It tends to be, the grown-ups, right? The people in, who've ministers and regulators and so on. So if you want your category to exist, you need to be in the room when the problem gets named, right? When it gets anointed. And so policy is a category creation tool. It's a way things get named. And so you can use it to help, create the conditions within which your market can spring into existence. And that is what the government and the regulators want. They want new commercial endeavor, not people just doing the same old in a slightly more efficient way, faster, better, or cheaper. They actually want net new commercial endeavor. And that's what creating a new category, creating a new market is. That's the fundament of growth, which is what we desperately need and want in this
I
country.
love this. I love this. I think one of the biggest things, actually, like problems I've always had in organizations, and I hear this all the time with marketing leaders, you should go into an organization and straight away they jump on you with training, kind of on the product or the service or whatever it is that you're marketing, and they'll tell you exactly how you're solving problems. But a lot of them do skip over or skim over what the actual problem is. And the great thing about what you're doing there when you're sitting in the room is actually you're hearing before even speaking, kind of you're there kind of listening there with them framing the problem in their language. So you're hearing all of their language, but you're hearing that kind of that pain and the story and everything from the horse's mouth. But then you can kind of start to ask sort of questions, because you're not there to sell, right? When you're sitting on that council, you're absolutely not there to sell, but you are there to kind of, prompt and to what's the word, navigate them, I suppose, through a journey by asking questions.
Well, one of the things that the people who run the Smart Data Council are constantly asking for is industry engagement.
Mm.
They need, they want, they do everything they can to secure that industry engagement because they realize it's absolutely vital. And that's why, to my mind, policy must not sit in some different silo in your organization. It shouldn't sit in government relations, in legal or in regulatory affairs, or any of the weird places people dump it. In category creation terms, letting policy sit in a silo is genuinely bonkers, right? Policy is where the biggest brainworms get born, right? If a minister or a regulator names the problem, you don't have to convince anyone that problem is real, because the process they go through is rigorous. So I think it's really important that marketers don't get stuck in a separate little silo. And I know it's a really human thing to do. Well, you do this, and I won't interfere with what you're doing if you don't interfere with what I'm doing, or you interfered with what I'm doing, so now I'm going to, honestly, mad, bonkers. We've absolutely got to think about this as holistic skills that the organization needs to deploy in order to achieve what it needs to achieve.
Mhm.
So I've never thought of policy as a separate skill set or a separate or something that is special and different and must be handled by people who are indeed special and different. It is absolutely vital. It is a crucial part of that broader business development, market development toolset.
Yep. No, totally agree. I've got one last question. We're just coming up to time now, but I've got one last quick question for you. And that is, what's the one thing that you wish someone had told you before you walked into a role and assumed that, that kind of, if, what you had before would work again, basically?
Well, I think burn the damn playbook is right up there, because the playbook, when you boil it right the way down, is the confidence trick that you play on yourself, right?
Mm.
It works because you think you know what you're doing. And in the early, you talked about, you walk into a new role. In the early weeks of a new role, you want to prove to people that they hired the right person. You're genuinely valuable. You act decisively. You project confidence. You get stuff moving. You're busy. But also stop you asking that most important question, which is, does this situation actually resemble in any way, shape, or form the playbook I'm trying to, use for it? And I would ask those questions. I'd say spend the first month just watching what lands and what doesn't. Not executing, certainly not optimizing, not bringing your greatest hits. Just watch and listen, because the signals are there. And if you do need to burn it, fine, burn the damn playbook. It's the most interesting place to be, because making it rain to create a new lake is harder than fishing in a lake that's been there for donkey's years and has got, a lot of competition. It's where the real work is. And if you get it right, if you implant enough brainworms, if you shift enough worldviews, if you create a category that didn't exist before, it's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And you will be remembered for it forever then as well. You own it. So that's amazing. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that, and I hope the audience did as well. So thank you very much, Louise. And thank you everyone to the audience for listening today.
Thank you.